So welcome everybody tonight. Our call is going to focus on designing your own homeschooling curriculum, obviously from a Catholic perspective. And we're just going to talk about how we do that and why we do that, and kind of the just the tips and tricks those of us who've done this a while have learned along the way, and maybe answer some of your questions too, I hope. As I said on the last call, I really love doing these kind of panel discussions because I'm a firm believer that there's no one right way to homeschool. In fact, in my opinion, there's very few wrong ways to homeschool. Like only if you're just neglecting your kids kind of thing. Because we all have different families, we all have different kids, different personalities, moms are all different, dads are different, just seasons of life are different. And so I love hearing from all of you and all of the moms to learn all the different ways that people make things work in their homes, so that I can kind of pick and choose and pull from that and get ideas to put together. Obviously, if I were to copy exactly what happens in Amy's house, it would not work in my house, even though it works fairly well in Amy's house. And of course, it's not perfect. I love you, Amy. But what I do isn't perfect either, but we can't copy. We have to just kind of figure this out. And even those who do choose a full curriculum, like we talked on Sunday evening, it still doesn't look the same in two houses. And it shouldn't look the same in two houses, because we're created by a God who is creative and makes us unique, and in his image, very individual. And so I always like to remind myself and others of those details, so that when we get, when something sounds really, really good, we can take that in and kind of discern, okay, is that best for my family? Because there's so many goods, right? So that being said, let us begin our conversation in prayer. My favorite prayer is the Memorare, so I thought that would be good to ask Our Lady to guide us this evening. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession, was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly into thee, Virgin of Virgins, my Mother. To thee I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer. Amen. Amen. Awesome. Thanks, ladies. So, like I said, I asked Mimi and Amy to come on the call specifically to share what works in their house. As you heard, they both have high schoolers. Mimi's got a graduate. So they kind of have done this for a while, just like me. And the questions I asked them to share with us are just obviously tell us a little bit about your family, again, to focus on why they decided to design their own curriculum and why they continue to do that. Like, what's the reason you're picking and choosing? How do you decide what to teach each year? What are the, how do you figure that out? And then what's your advice to someone considering going the eclectic route rather than sticking to a set curriculum? Because I think that can kind of give us a picture of what works for you and give us ideas. And then we'll come back, like I said, and definitely do Q&As. So if you hear things that one of us says that stimulates a question, drop that in the chat, and then that way you won't forget it. And then when we get to the Q&A part, I will make sure to bring all those up, and we can go from there. Make sense? All right. So I am going to have Mimi start us off tonight, if that's okay. I'm going to pin your video so you're front and center. And if you want to just share with us, we are here for you, listening.
Thanks. So I was just saying a little bit about our family. So yeah, I have one graduate and one that's going to be a senior. I'm going to be with all boys in my house. I've always cobbled together our curriculum. We've always homeschooled, and why we did it at the beginning, I think I was really interested in just a different type of education for my kids. My number one goal being that I really did not want everyone doing everything differently. I didn't want one kid in one workbook and one kid in another workbook and another kid in another workbook. Like literally it was my worst nightmare. I just couldn't imagine. I am not a type A personality. I am not Jenny. I cannot imagine trying to like keep up with that. Right now, those people that are crisis schooling that are talking about doing that with all those kids, like it literally gives me a panic attack. That is not, I just didn't want that. So I knew I wanted something different. So then as we started pursuing, I was very, very fortunate to belong to a homeschool co-op that started to talk about the idea of Charlotte Mason and the idea of Elizabeth Foss's Real Learning. And then we went and we did a book club on Real Learning. And I was like, this is it. I want to do Catholic home education that doesn't look like a school at home. That was my goal. I didn't want to do a school at home. And at the time, I only had 2 little girls who were 4 and 2. We had just moved to Miami from Minnesota. My husband's from there. So, and we started it that way. And there was nothing out there that would give me what I wanted to do. So I used Elizabeth's book to do book lists. I did that combined with Mater Amabilis and started to do my research about Charlotte Mason and narration. I love the idea of narration. And just talk to people. And as the more that I talked to people, the more that I realized, to tell you the God's honest truth, it was more about what I didn't want to do than what I wanted to do. It was a lot of like looking at something and being like, yeah, no, no. You know, when you sit at a homeschool conference and you have a speaker, and I'm not going to use names. Literally, I got up and walked out of the speaker. I was like, that is not the homeschool mom I want to be. I will never be that person. I will never be that person. I need to find something different. And so cobbling together my own curriculum was the best way that I could do it. And so we've always done it. And so we've stayed that way. There have been years, especially when I had 4 under 7, where I was like, okay, let's just get a package. And then I would look at the curriculum, I would look at the catalog, and I'd be like, all right, so we'll just get this, and then I'll change this, and then I'll change this, and then I'll change this. And, yeah, that's not gonna work. So we've been very lucky that I haven't had to do a box curriculum. I have been able to do it. It's not perfect at all. We just cleaned out our where all of our books are. I have 3 different math curriculums that I have at least 6 levels of. So it works, it doesn't work. I can tell you what doesn't work for some. I also have 2 children with dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, every dys under the sun. They are my 2nd and my 3rd child, 1 girl, 1 boy. And so what worked for my oldest, who was always very much like, she's going to go to college, she's going to go a very traditional route, was never going to work for my next one. She just wasn't going to go that route. She knew she didn't want to go straight into school. She knew she wanted to do a gap year and that she wanted to do missionary work and maybe, have a vocation to be a sister or to, so right away, my original homeschooling idea had to kind of change because my 1st and my 2nd were very, very different. So we've just always come from there. Now I feel like it's weird. Like I really truly feel like everything is kind of set up for the ones that are coming up. So it's a very different, I don't make the decisions anymore, even though I'm going to have a very different schooling environment for my one that's 7 compared to the top 4. The top 4 were always surrounded by siblings, and then I have a 5.5 year gap. So I have to do things a little bit differently for him. But
so how do you choose each year or have you chosen each year what to do, what to teach?
For the most part, I have, especially the first ones, I did a lot of Mater Amabilis, and I pick and choose. And I had to, at one point, realize that I needed to get myself out of math. So I took myself out of math by using teaching textbooks. And then eventually, we've now transitioned mostly into Math Mammoth. just because of the way that my boys, modern, sorry.
Oh, Mater Amabilis. I'll type.
Mater Amabilis. Okay, Jenny, you know what that is. And so I use them as a guideline, especially for first through 8th grade. Mater Amabilis for me, for kinder through 1st grade, just as a spine. Now, that being said, I use RC history for history. So I am like, it's just what has worked over the years. I am now, my kids couldn't believe it. I am now in my 4th rotation of the 4-year cycle of history. I'm about to start my 5th rotation. We have now gone through it 4 times. I'm on my, like that is mind blowing to me. We just finished US history. I'm about to start ancients. And when I finish ancients, I will only have 2 homeschoolers left. So like it's just, I don't know. That was the basis of it. And then I realized that I think the best way that I could explain how I kind of was able to do it was that there's going to be gaps no matter what. I was willing to deal with the gaps better than I was willing to deal with a curriculum that I had to constantly change. So I kind of went with that, and we go with it year to year. Now things like art and music, I have certain curriculums that I like to follow. I love the new CHC art. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. It's so wonderful. And so I love that. And I'm like, okay, that's great. We'll use the first one for 2 years and then the next one for 2 years. It works out really well. And then there's sometimes that I will stumble across a curriculum and I think it's the perfect thing. And I will tell you God's honest truth. 5 weeks into it, I'm like, yeah, no. And I am a firm believer that it has to work for mom before it has to work for any kid. Sorry, if it doesn't work for me, I don't care how much you like the curriculum. It's not going to happen. Especially in middle school. There is nothing worse than sitting there and trying to bang your head with a 12-year-old who does not want to do what you have put in front of them. It's just not worth it.
So what's your advice to someone who's like, I might want to pick and choose my own? What do I do? How do I go?
Start with what you want, what you have, and what you love. So if there's a math curriculum that you love, great. That's usually not the first thing that you love. But anyways, if there's an English curriculum, or maybe not even a curriculum, even just a workbook that works. Teresa Rivas swears by daily, what is that? Easy Grammar. Mm-hmm. Easy Grammar. She loves Easy Grammar. She loves those workbooks. Start with what you have. I love Pam Barnhill's the framework. If I didn't have it already in there, that's where I would start, because there's a lot of issues that have to do with goal setting and where you want to be at the end, which is, if anybody was ever to design your own curriculum for high school, that's what I would say. You want to design your curriculum for high school at graduation, like the goal being graduation. So what do you want to see for those 4 years? If you want to do 4 years of science, write out the 4 years of science. If you want to do the 4 years of math, what 4 years of math? If you want to write out the things will change, but there needs to be that end goal. We always used to laugh, because when I would talk to new moms about transitioning from one thing, from traditional school to the other school or whatever, one of the big things that I talked about was the fact that you need to figure out science and history right away, which I know sounds crazy, but science and history build upon each other. So if you don't do science in some sort of order, you can't really change things in 10th grade or in 11th grade. Because if you haven't done the physical science and the biology, it's really hard to do the chemistry and the physics. The same thing goes with history. If you don't start it somewhere, you're going to start it in the middle, and then how do you back it up? So those two are the easiest places to start. Figure out where you want to start for those two. The harder things are going to be the literature and the math. And then the other huge thing to remember is we don't have to be grade specific. So if you have a child who is bomb sticks ahead in literature, don't make that poor kid read 3rd grade literature. Let him read 6th grade literature. And the same thing goes with math. If you have a kid that really struggles with math and you everything else is really far ahead, then just let him stay in the old math book and keep going there. And that is, I think, the most beautiful thing about building your own curriculum, is that you really can say exactly that. Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm not going to do this. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I remember my dad, God bless him, when we started this journey, my dad is a neurosurgeon, and all he kept thinking about was, no one's going to go to college. No one's going to go to college. My grandkids, I can't believe you're going to do this. But his big thing when we started was book reporting. For some reason, he thought, my dad's Cuban American. He did his medical school in Spain, and he's Cuban and he's Hispanic. And his big thing was, like, they need to have this education because in the United States, they do book reports. I don't know where he got it from. I'm Charlotte Mason. We do narration. My children have never done a book report, ever. And like, I remember him talking to Louisa about like book reports, whatever. And she literally turned around and was like, we're never going to write a book report. Mom doesn't make us write book reports. And he was like, what? And she goes, I can tell you about the book, but she's never going to make us write a book report. And all of a sudden it was like, your mentality has to think. And exactly what you said, not everything is going to work for every family.
Right.
And there are going to be seasons. There are going to be seasons where it's going to be like, I need to literally order the box to come to my house to open up to here, put this. And then there's going to be other seasons that are like, oh, let's do whatever. Nature study for 3 hours in the afternoon. At this point, that would be great in my house. But
Awesome.
I'm trying to think, what was that other question that you were saying? Oh, why do I keep doing it? For me, I really can't imagine ever opening a box and being like, I'm good with this. It's been too many years. It's too many years, and now I have like certain things I like, and we're in the process of, like, Max will be in 7th grade, and he's got his science is all set up, the history is all set up. Kiko will start in 9th grade. It works out great because he starts with ancients. So like, I can't imagine needing it. I really would. I am looking into Mother of Divine Grace, the younger stuff for Ignacio, because at some point he's not going to have siblings to do everything with. And so there's just a lot of unknowns that we get to. Max will graduate from high school when Ignacio finishes 7th grade. So we've already started to think about that. And funny thing is, about 10 years ago, I took a notebook and I wrote all the years down at the top, like 2010 through 2035. And I wrote down like where everybody was going to be, like what grade.
Yep.
And I sat there and cried. I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to graduate any of them out, And that's when Tom was like, look, Max graduates in 2026. And I was like, 2026? We're never going to finish, and now we're talking about him retiring in 2026, and that's only 6 years from now. So, it comes and it goes, but I love it. We would never do anything different. If God allows us to continue to do it, awesome. we would continue to build the curriculum that we have. I like it. And now with Homeschool Connections, I love it. So I'm good.
Awesome. I'm glad. Okay.
I'll mute myself and stop talking.
Okay, I'll unpin you and you can share more as we get to the end. Amy, are you ready to be pinned and up and going? All right, let's get you up here and unmute. Maybe. There we go. Can we hear you?
Yes.
Awesome.
Is that good? All right.
Yeah, that's perfect. So go ahead, share with us your experiences.
All right. So we have 5 kids, 3 through 15. This year we started high school and kindergarten. We've always homeschooled and we've always picked our own curriculum. similar to what Mimi said. It was basically I could pinpoint what I didn't like about other things, or what I realized my kids wouldn't do well. My two oldest are boys, and there's no way they were going to sit down do 4 workbooks at a time, and that is your school. That just was not going to happen. So we had to find other ways and other programs to meet them where they're at and also help me keep my sanity, which would not be chaining a kid to a table and doing workbooks 4 times. I know that works for some kids and for some families, and I'm learning that as I have girls, they like workbooks a lot more than boys do. It's amazing. But that wouldn't have worked for my first couple kids. So you asked, I think, why we started doing that,
Yeah,
and partly was that the flexibility of being able to meet our kids where they're at, and also to maintain flexibility in our family, where we as a family are, and maintaining simplicity, because I'm going to have to differentiate for math, and I'm going to have to differentiate for literature or reading, because everybody's going to hit those at different times, and that's more, I think, for most kids, that's more age differentiated. But if we could all do the same historical period, or if we could all do the same science topic, like if everybody's doing biology, even if they're doing different things, my brain won't have to go quite so in so many different directions. And that makes my life simpler, and it makes my life easier. And again, if it doesn't work for mom, it's just not going to work. So it has to work for mom. Yeah, so that's why we do that and why we chose to do that way. And then
how do you decide each year, like, what am I going to teach, or how am I going to come up with this?
So it helps me to think in boxes. So I'm big on the 4 R's, which is reading, writing, arithmetic, math, and religion. And so I will write up a page with the subject boxes, like a subject on the left-hand side, and then go across and say, this is the thing I'm going to use to fill that subject's requirements. So English for bigger kids is not just grammar, it's grammar and writing and spelling and vocabulary. So how can I cover all those things? What are the different things I'm going to use? So I may use 4 different things all under English, and it may be from 4 different providers, but that works. And then we can add in history and science and fine arts and things at the end. So I'd literally just list the subjects in a column, and then list the curriculum or the type of books I'm going to use that will fill that box that we need to do. And then the other ways I do it is I kind of, at the end of the year, I start looking at what we're doing well in and what we're not doing well in, and see what we all need to work on. This last year, I realized everyone's handwriting was not very good. So this year for morning time, we added in copy work every day. Everybody's doing copy work, from the high schooler down to the 4th grader. The kindergartner gets a little bit different time, but that's anyways, everybody's practicing that thing. We're all doing that part together. And then the other thing I keep in mind is I give my kids an evaluation at the end of the year to ask them what they liked, what they didn't like, and what they want to learn next year. And I try to honor that as much as I can. Obviously, there's some things they have to do, but I'll give them some say in it once they hit 4th, 5th grade. We usually typically do 3 or 4 literature books a year, and I'll let them pick 1 or 2. There's 1 or 2 I want them to do, and they will do those, but they also get some say in the other ones that they would like to read. And that's fine, because I'm giving them the options. So they still get to choose, but they're choosing within parameters that I'm comfortable with. And then asking them what they want to learn about. Like for science, will dictate sometimes if we do more chemistry or more physics. I had a kid last year, he literally wrote, I want to blow things up. Because he saw the Coke bottle with the Mentos experiment at some point, and that's what he wanted to do. So this year we made sure to get him a science curriculum that was hands-on and had almost daily experiments, and he has thrived with that. So that's been wonderful. Somebody's asked me, do I do the same science for the high school and kindergartner? This year it changed up a little bit, because once we hit high school, you kind of have to follow a certain order to be able to fit everything in by college. So it's not so much similar anymore, but I do try and find ways to group them together when I can. Last year I had my then 6th grader and 3rd grader doing a program together. This year everyone is separate. Just, it didn't work out as well this year, but that's okay. We figured out a way to make that work. And when that happens, because of the whole, everyone has limited time, energy, and money, I try to find things that they can do more on their own. So the experiment things that my 7th grader was doing, he pretty much could do those on his own. the science that my high schooler was doing was an online class. He pretty much could do that on his own. The science that my fourth grader was doing, also online. So she can do a lot of that on her own, and then the rest of the week she's reading books. And the kindergartner, I don't worry about science, other than he might watch the bigger kids do experiments. That's not important. Kindergarten's all about getting him to read. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Oh, and then advice. Yes. What advice do you have if you're doing this? Similar to what Mimi said, if you have something that works for you, don't change it. Keep it as long as you possibly can. Hold on to it for dear life, because if it works, don't mess with it. Keep a good thing going. Keep it simple. The 4 R's again. Keep that, especially for elementary, even middle school. History and science are kind of icing on the cake to an extent. Get something in there you're wanting to absorb that knowledge, but they don't have to be proficient in everything. That's what high school is for. And then find a way to stay organized for each subject, whether that's setting up a set procedure or figuring out where you're going to put everything, or a certain order in the day you go through, because everyone is doing different things and there isn't necessarily a set box. I can't think of the word, lesson plan to follow. You're going to have to make your own lesson plan. So find a way to organize that works for you. And it may not be the way the lesson plans came to you. Just find a way that works for you. So, yeah.
Very cool. Carolina asked, what's the science that you did in 7th grade?
Oh, it was the TOPS science books. They worked great, and he had a blast.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. I will get you unpinned, and we will be sure to ask you lots of questions later. Gosh, you guys said a lot of what I was going to say, so this will be quick. So yeah, like I said, my kids are now 7 to 17. So I have one finishing 1st grade and one finishing 11th grade, a 3rd, 4th grader, and a freshman. And, why did we start picking and choosing curriculum? I think in the beginning, so I was a classroom teacher also. I taught secondary English language arts. So I taught some high school, some middle school. And then all of a sudden I had to teach kindergarten or decided to teach kindergarten. So I did a lot of research. I'm a researcher. I probably started researching homeschooling when my oldest was 2, because that just appealed to us at the time. And so I learned about all the different methods and all the different options. And because I'm an English person, the reading books part was what stood out to me. And I saw how we could learn so much from reading and language without it being like school. So also, I guess, kind of like Mimi, as a school teacher, I didn't want to imitate school at home either. Didn't feel like that was the best possible way to work one-on-one with a kid or 1-on-4 with kids. I felt like from my education background, I realized it was really hard to teach 25 kids for 50 minutes a day and then rotate through. So I didn't want that. I wanted them to have a more whole education. So I also really wanted to pull resources that were kind of thematic in nature. And we did a lot of that in preschool. I mean, that's common in preschool, where you do a theme of the week or whatever, and you're doing maybe some science, you're reading a book, you're doing different things all around a theme. So we kind of started out that way. And just as the years went on, just picked and chose, yeah, English major, based on what we needed that year. It was really an exercise in looking at my kid and figuring out what is it that they need to learn rather than just pick something up. I always, there were years when I would pick something up and I'd go, oh, this curriculum looks great. Let's see if we can enroll in this program. And I would read through everything. And like Mimi said, I would be like, oh, wait, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. Oh, that won't work for my kid. Oh, that won't work for me. So there wasn't ever anything that I was just like, yes, I want to do all of this. I'm just a rebel. I'm type A, so I really like control. And I didn't want to cede that control to some other curriculum, I guess. I think it works for many, many people. And in a lot of ways, some days it would make my life easier if I could surrender like that. But that's kind of why we do the pick and choose. Why I still do it, everybody kind of calls us eclectic homeschoolers when you pull different resources together and you don't have like a really set thing. I just call myself a whatever works homeschooler. So I do whatever works. So whatever we're going to get done, whatever my kids make progress on, when I did live in Miami and met Mimi, one of the best things about being in Florida was that I had to look at the progress my kid made from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, because it was part of our state requirements. And looking at that progress, that's now my standard. How can my kid make progress? I don't care if they're reading it on grade level or they're doing math on grade level. I just care, how can they make progress this year? And maybe they need to spend a little bit more time in one area than another. So that helps me. And so that's how I decide what to teach each year. I pull out a lot of stuff from the different curriculum providers. I really do look at all those websites almost every year. I go to Mother Divine Grace, I go to Colby, I go to Seton, I go to, what are they reading? What are the kids studying? And then I kind of pull ideas from that and look at the resources I have and that have worked for some kids, and just pull things together. We also have a 5-year gap in the middle. So my daughter is 17 and then I have a son who's 14, but then we have a 5-year gap and I have the 9-year-old and 7-year-old boys. So things don't work the same for any of my kids. Like, I don't think any 2 kids are going to do very much the same. I had an oldest girl, and then all of a sudden I had a boy who's relatively academic, but not a girl. And then I had a boy who has some special needs and difficulties that I had to address differently. And then I have the youngest who's not like his brother, even though they're so close in age. Tried to combine stuff with those 2 and that didn't work. So made that mistake. But that's kind of how I decide. I just look at each kid. And like Mimi said, we're going to talk about Pam Barnhill's Plan Your Year, because I just love how well laid out it is and how she helps you look at each kid and what their needs are in the coming year and kind of make that plan, and figure it out from there. Advice to someone considering this, it takes courage and confidence to do, and you have to be okay with not being okay sometimes, because we can't say, oh, well, Laura Berquist said this is the good curriculum, or Ginny Seifert said this will work really well. We have to just figure it out and hope for the best. And it's a lot of trial and error sometimes. And you have to be okay with that. Like Mimi said, you have to be okay with gaps. You have to be okay with failing and getting a curriculum that, like, after 2 weeks, you're like, oh, nope, that doesn't work. So it's risky, but it's, for us, worth it. I don't know that it's worth it for everybody. I will say that crucial to choosing what to do each year is where we are in our family and the season of life that we're in. I've done whole years of Charlotte Mason, and I've done whole years of almost all workbook and online classes, because it just depended on what my family needed, what I was able to give to the kids in that season. And I don't think that they have a mixed up, mashed education more than the average public school kid, because every teacher in a classroom teaches differently anyway. And even though there's kind of a curriculum for the state, having been a classroom teacher, I can tell you it doesn't look that neat in the classroom as it does on the website. It just looks very different. So I'm okay with that, and that's something you have to be okay with. You have to be okay with that. So Pam Barnhill and being okay with doing it. And then the confidence part is just know that God gave you these kids, and you know them better than anyone in the whole wide world. So when you look at your kid and you say, that kid needs whatever it is, you're right. 9 times out of 10, you're right. You know your kid. Be confident in your ability to just say, this is what they need this year, and this is what we need to work on, and do that and do what's best for them when you can. You cannot do what's best for every single kid, every single subject, every single year. There has to be give and take. But overall, you can prioritize and make those choices. And that's how we've figured that out. So I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm going to unpin myself so we can see everybody again. Oh, I didn't even pin myself. Oops, there we go.
Jenny, I was going to say too,
Yeah.
that I think one of the things that when you design your own curriculum is kind of daunting and overwhelming, but once you start doing it, it really is not as big a deal. What Amy was saying about with the lesson planning and with when you go to design your own curriculum, that is key and essential. That's why I think Pam's, the planning the year and doing it ahead of time. And for me, I feel like I'm already one step behind, because usually by this time in April, I am like pretty, like Amy's like, yeah, totally. I'm pretty much like almost done with what the year coming next year is done. I have science. Like I have science. That's it. Like I still have to sit down and do so much, but I think that organizing is like key. And this is coming from a non-type A person. This is coming from a person that's not, it's not, I'm organized. I don't mean to say I'm not organized, but it doesn't come naturally to me. But what I've realized is the years that I don't spend the time organizing, it is a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And there have been years like that, especially years that I was either nursing or pregnant with babies, or when I was pregnant with Ignacio. That was really hard because I had, so you started kindergarten and high school. I started kindergarten and college. And it was like crazy.
It was that college kid for my mom.
Exactly. Yeah. But I do think that organization is key, and that might be like a whole nother, like, once people have listened to this, and if people, especially in the group, if that's something that you guys want to talk about or whatever, because I think that is a stumbling block, that I think some people are so willing to do this and build their curriculum and do this, and then it's like, but how?
Yeah. Right. We are going to do a call. I mean, our organization call is going to be about organizing the stuff in the space, but we are going to do a call on lesson planning and scheduling, and we may see if we need to divide that up, or at least divide up some of our chats about how that relates to designing your own curriculum, because it is different. I think I would add to what you said, Mimi, is that coming up with your own stuff requires more upfront work from mom. You have to plan blocks of time, months in advance of your school year, to start figuring this stuff out. It's not something you can just order in August or just decide quickly in August. It takes some prayer, some pondering, some research. And I do think it takes time to kind of figure these things out, because you're not just picking one thing. But it's totally worth it, because the way we set up our year, it looks different for everybody. But some people will, write out their whole lesson plans for the whole year. I kind of do a semi version of that. And some people will just every week look at what's been done and then write out the week, or even just, every day. Having a plan set in place is really key to making something like this work, because there isn't, like Amy said, there's not the check boxes from the company. You got to figure out your own, and we can look at different formats for that.
And I will add, once you do that and you put that work in at the beginning, it does make that weekly and day-to-day stuff run better. And when you have the procedures set up for your kids and for your family, school can kind of run on autopilot to an extent. You still have to make sure it gets done, but the week to week and the month to month stuff isn't quite as daunting, because you have considered what will work for your kids and will work for your family, and hoping you don't get 5 weeks and you have to chuck something. But that has happened.
And this depends a lot on what resources you choose too, because there's a lot of stuff you could pick up that you just do the next page. Right. And that's an easy plan. Do the next page. The next day I do the next page. Mm-hmm. But there's other resources where you have to put more thought into it. Like, okay, we have a book to read. How many chapters are we going to read in how much time? That's not already laid out for you in a lot of, if you're picking and choosing a lot of stuff. So what questions do you guys have that you want to throw out either in the chat or verbally and let us know? I think we answered what was here already.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say two things. One, that actually where you were talking about analyzing the last year and putting it together. Actually, that's what I like about doing the own curriculum, that you get to think, not more, but to really think of for each child what they need. And I think that's what's so exciting about doing this. It's harder maybe at the beginning, but it just makes it more yours and more exciting to work with your kid, because you know what you're doing with your kid and what you want from them, or what you think their potential is. So that's one thing I like about doing this. But somebody said, I think it was Amy, saying that science and history, you leave it more for high school. And actually, to tell the truth, I've never really done history and science so much, because I was the same. I kind of leave it at the end if I can't. And now that my kid is in 7th grade, he likes history, so he reads a lot of books of history. He's like doing it his own way, in a way. But now that I have more kids in going to older ages or elementary, I'm thinking of doing like you were saying, together history and the same thing, and then science. So what, with the experience you have, what do you suggest is the basics history or the basic science to start with as a group and then go forward so they can be ready for high school? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so for history, we do the 4-year cycles like Mimi mentioned. So the 4-year cycles are ancients, medieval, modern, and U.S. history. And you just repeat those cycles every 4 years. So in theory, by the time your kid graduates, they've gone through that 3 or 4 times. 3 times.
Okay.
I can't do math right now. It's late.
And it works.
It
really
does. It works
work.
great.
Trust me.
Yeah.
My daughter who went to college, and it works, and they will get it. They might not get it the first time or the second time, but eventually they'll get it.
Well,
Okay.
and what that looks like is you're studying the same time period, but one kid might read a different book than another kid because they're at different levels, or you might have a read aloud that you're reading to everybody, but the youngest one just listens and the oldest one has to write a paper about it. Like you're still requiring different things. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay.
And another thing we do is just particular, we've used Story of the World and Story of Civilization, and they have those 4-year cycles. And so everyone will listen to the audio. So they're getting that background story. And just for example, my kindergartner just listens to the audio. That's his homework. I don't care. That's it. He's hearing it. He's taking it, and that's enough.
Right.
The 4th grader will listen to it. We'll do the maps. We'll do a narration on it and draw a picture to go with it and maybe a project and take a quiz on it. My 7th grader will listen to it, maybe do the narration, and I'll have them do an online class that covers that same time period. And same with my high schooler. They're listening to the same thing we're doing. We're all in the same time period, but he will be taking an online class at his level that covers the same time period. So everyone this year is doing American history, but they're all doing it in a little bit different way. But my brain's not trying to jump between castles and presidents and ancient Rome all at the same time and wanting to, explode a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that speaking of combining things, I think Pam Barnhill in her book talks about skill subjects versus content subjects, and how skill subjects are ones you can't really combine because you're talking math or spelling or like phonics, things that are more skill based. And then content area subjects are the history, the science, sometimes literature, depending on what that is. And so it's much easier to combine those content subjects than it is the skill-based ones.
So for science, what do you suggest to start with? Because they have to be very biology and chemistry. So for science,
so I would just because of little kids, I would start with biology because that's your basic building block. What are things made of? How are things made? Atoms, cells, that sort of thing, and build on that. There's a growing trend towards actually starting with physics, especially in high school, because that's the basis of everything. So that's another option. Physics is also fun. It's hands-on experiments your kids can do and, blow things up like my kid wanted to do, and, rolling cars and seeing how things work. So I think either of those would be good to start with, seeing how things work, or a biology where you're learning about things and like doing nature studies and nature walks and just seeing how things work, because those two kind of complement each other. And that when you see how nature works, you can see how machines work, because we're pulling from nature to make those machines and vice versa. So if either one of those, I think would be good to start with. And then you could pull in chemistry later because you need the math component. And, but yeah, life science, biology, or physics would be my pick to start with. Either one of those would be a good thing.
And that's a great place to ask your kids.
Yeah.
Because especially, Harry, how old is your oldest?
He's going to be, he's 12. He'll be 13 in September.
Okay, see, that's the perfect age, because ask him what he wants to study, because you teach the oldest.
Which is good.
The oldest. So what does he want to study? Does he want to study how things work? Okay, let's start with that. Depending on what grade he's at, work backwards from that. Say, okay, look, we're all going to study what you want to study. And then let's work with that. Because if he wants to, he's like, Mom, I really want to talk about anatomy. Okay, let's find something that all of us can learn about with anatomy. And he's still at a point where, Florida's different than other states, but like we can start putting for transcripts 8th grade. So for science, in an 8th, if he's before 8th grade, really, truly, you really can do anything in 7th grade.
Yeah.
And then in 8th grade, what are we prepping for 9th grade? go to what he wants to do. He's the one that's important that you want to make sure is actually listening. So, you know, this is one place that you can give him autonomy. Right. Ask him what he wants to do, and then go with what he wants to do, and then ask the other ones, like what Amy was saying. Okay, he wants to do anatomy. What's one thing you want to do? Or maybe look at it in trimesters or semesters, or
unit studies.
Or
unit studies. You could pick something each kid wants to do. Exactly. Have them pick the thing, and each kid gets 6 to 9 weeks on their thing.
And for elementary, that is so wonderful.
Yeah.
For elementary, for anybody before 6th grade, that's the beauty of designing your own curriculum.
Right.
You know, if you have a 5-year-old who's obsessed with water, now is the time to study water. You know, or you have, I don't remember who it was in our co-op, who their entire year was zoology, because all the kid wanted to do was go to the zoo. All he wanted to do was go to the zoo. So she's like, I guess I'm studying zoology. You know, they studied, they drew, they did habitats.
Yep.
Like, the beauty of that, exactly what Jenny was saying, content versus skill. Find the content they want to study. Yeah. You know, it's the same. We have friends of ours whose son is obsessed with war pilots. All he wants to read, everything that has to do with flight and war and all this stuff. And she's like, I literally the other day decided that that's the art he's going to do this year, because he's not going to draw anything else. We are lucky that way. We don't have to follow what anybody says.
Right.
We can be eclectic. And so teach to that oldest kid and have everybody else come along with it. It works, you know.
Definitely.
Thanks.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
What other questions do you guys have?
For folks who have older kids who are high school or college, I'm assuming with the eclectic, it's harder to, like the Mother of Divine Grace, whatever, has a school where you can register and it's accredited and you can get your grades and they can even grade stuff, but nobody's grading your eclectic mess. So how does it look or how do you deal with applying for colleges and having them take your kids? Is it just, hey, my kid got something on the ACT score, or?
Okay.
Go ahead. Can I say
Go ahead, Jenny. Go ahead, Jenny.
Different varieties, and then you tell us how it worked for you?
Yeah.
So there's a whole spectrum there, because you can totally do all of your own stuff and grade all your own stuff and create your own transcript, and colleges will take it. But there's also ways to kind of boost up that transcript or make it look good. Online classes are really huge and a great benefit to kids, especially because you're giving them another teacher to practice learning from. And I think that's a good college prep thing. And so they're getting grades from that. Dual enrollment is a really good thing that a lot of families have found works for them, where you're enrolled at usually a community college, and it counts for both college and high school credit, and they're getting graded like they would a college course. So those are the things that I like, options. Some of the options, there's others that are out there that can help, mitigate that. But most colleges these days love homeschoolers, and they don't care if you have accredited coursework, and they don't care if you took, dual enrollment or online or whatever. They are going to look at the SAT, ACT, and that is huge. And so you have to prep for that. But from what I'm hearing, you have lots of support.
And how does that work? My rising 5th grader is gifted, and I want him to get scholarships for college, and so that's, I guess, like, I think he'll score very well on the SAT, ACT, but at the same time, like, I'm not sure that they'll, yes, they'll take his transcript, but are they going to give it the same weight that they would if he was, 4th in his class?
That's what they don't look at class ranks, because for homeschoolers, unless you're a twin, you're the first in the class anyways.
Yeah.
So SAT and ACT is actually like the thing they're going to look at a lot for homeschoolers, which actually in some ways is good, because all of our homeschools are so different and all of the public schools are so different. So the ACT SAT score is kind of like a leveling ground that can work to our benefit, especially if your kid's a good test taker. Really,
your kid will fail the
right.
them.
Yes.
So, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and you're depending on what kind of scholarship too. There's the merit-based scholarship, which is dependent upon that SAT, basically. You go to a college and they're like, if you have this score, you get this much money. You have this score, you get this much money. And then there's the other scholarships that are based on your life experiences, and homeschoolers like can totally like outpace, you know, a lot of people. If you plan for that in high school and do volunteering work and you're doing, you know, you're getting experiences in the real world and all those things. Mimi, what's worked for you guys?
Well, we have our own experience, and I have had a ton other experience from different family members, different friends, different everything. Valerie, one of our closest friends, her son just graduated from Georgia Tech at 16. So, you know, talking to Taina about when you get to the gifted and talented, it's a very different track. Depending on the grade level, depending on the ages, depending on everything. And at that point, especially in high school, they need to take classes that aren't in your home. They have to take dual enrollment. They can take them at the local high school. I don't know. You're in Tennessee?
Yeah.
So I don't know what the laws are for Tennessee. You have to look into that.
If you're out of the public school, you're out of the public school.
Okay, so then you need to go the college route.
Yeah, we take them at the community college.
Right, you need to take them at the community college. Now, what I would do is I would research now what grade they can start that. For Florida, they can start in 7th grade. They can take 2 classes a semester.
Wow.
If they pass the PERT, the entrance exam. So the path that you walk is different from each child. It's different in each state, and it's different in their ultimate goal. So speaking from our point of view, our oldest daughter decided she did not want to do dual enrollment classes. She suffers from very severe anxiety, and dual enrollment in our local community college here in Miami had all sorts of people that just were not the best for her. So she decided not to do an enrollment class. But her junior year, she decided to take mostly live classes through Homeschool Connections, and then she did take a dual enrollment class through Franciscan University.
Online, right?
Online, yep, online. And then she decided mid-junior year that she was going to finish her senior year in December, and decided to take all her credits in the fall. Because she wanted to do an internship. Now, while she did that, her number one goal was SATs. Now, she got an almost perfect score on her verbal and did not do very well on her math, but it was good enough to get that merit money. So it really does depend on the kid. I have my next child cannot take the SATs. For her, it would be pointless. She would vomit, and it's just pointless. But she's also decided to do a gap year. She doesn't even know if she wants to go to college. And then there's you know, Nick, and I mean, the reality is that you have to do the research early enough, especially if you have a gifted and talented child. When you have a gifted and talented kid, the world there's no boundaries for them when they homeschool.
Yeah.
So if they are in 6th grade and doing enough to be able to do a high school class, let them do it. And so it's important to consider that and to think about what it is that they want. And the ramifications will be in your state. So if they can go in and get the dual enrollment, now there might be dual enrollment that's online, especially for a 7th or 8th grader. That might be the perfect situation. There's Rate My Professor. Rate My Professor will tell you exactly which professors do not take for dual enrollment. They hate dual enrollment students, and it happens. And your life is very different when you get high schoolers. We laugh about the fact that it is the hardest thing in the world is to have high schoolers and anybody else. Because high schoolers, you kind of have to tailor for them. So until you get there, you're good. Just keep tracking on and keep doing what you're doing. And, you know, especially if you have a gifted and talented kid. But it's a matter of just staying on top of it. The other thing to consider is if you know, not now, they're in 3rd or 4th grade, it's not a big deal. But let's say they get to be 7th or 8th grade or even 9th grade, and they know that either A, they have a school they really want to go to, or B, athletes. The other thing with athletes is that's a whole other thing. NCAA and their rules are a whole nother can of worms. But if they know where they want to go, open up the university that they want to go to and look and see what the average score for the SAT was of the freshman class that was accepted. Not that applied.
That was accepted. Yeah. And they have to be above that.
They have to be above that.
Yeah.
And nowadays, get them into a prep class. I'm sorry, all of these people that they can do the workbook. No, get them into a class. These teachers know how to take the test.
And there are online classes that are great. Like
there are online classes. There are classes that will tailor them. What Lisa took when she took her SAT class, the God bless Dr. Jeff, he was like, literally stop doing the vocabulary. Yeah. Like you're gonna score 100%. Can you please do the math problems? They know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, so when it gets to that, it's a different.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is that you'll have some kids that, they're in 7th or 8th grade and they know this is what I'm doing. This is what I love doing. This is what I'm good at. This is where I'm headed. I even know what school, and they're good, and you're just target. But you'll have some kids that won't know, and they'll start out saying, well, maybe I'll do this, or maybe I'll do this, or maybe I have no earthly clue, and it might change. So I love what you said, Mimi, about the look at the end and just make a plan and head that way. And if somewhere in the middle, it has to change and you need to modify it, that's okay. And you can adapt then, but you do have to look ahead and kind of get some sense. And if your kid can't think that way, think for them. I have one like that. And I said, they have no earthly clue as they're entering high school, what they're going to do with their life, or if they're going to college, or what they're going to study. And I'm like, but I know what their strengths are. So that we're going to play to their strengths. We're going to make sure they have the bare minimum on their, struggling areas so that they have options. That was always my goal. And that's advice I got, was going into the upper grades, whether it be middle school or high school, and you're planning that route, is make sure you keep your kids' options open, because they might change their mind. And if they're all like, I'm never going to college, and you don't prepare them for college, and then junior year, they're like, I want to go to college. Guess what? That's going to be really hard to catch up and figure that out. So, similarly, like, the way that applies is, I said earlier that we were in like this place with math, and I'm like, we just keep going. And Mimi said, just keep them in the same math book and keep going, but keep going. Because if you just say, oh gosh, this kid is horrible at math, I'm just not going to do it this year, you're not setting them up for the future well, even in like 1st or 2nd grade. There's some things that you just try to make progress, even if it's slow progress, for that long haul. Other questions? Those are good. I know we're running that late here, but I want to make sure if you guys have questions on the tip.
Yes, one more, sorry. You were saying that how do you find out what ACT or ACT the freshman year, or that you were saying, how do you find out that out? Like the kid that went
on the website.
On the website? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. That's
yeah, it's posted everywhere.
Yeah, there's actually websites that put every single school and what their average scores are. I mean,
okay.
It's all out.
That's also a great way to look at, if you've never done high school before, that is also a great way to look at what it is that most schools in your state want for their high school transcripts. Yeah. So for example, in the state of Florida, it's really not a big deal, which I don't understand, whether you have 3 years of math or 4. For most universities outside of the state of Florida, you need to have 4 years of math. Now, doesn't have to be the 4 years you think of math, but that's a really great place to start with how you want your transcript to end.
Yes.
So if you look at it and you open up University of Miami and their requirements are, you need to have this and this and this and this. Mm-hmm. And I know if Texas doesn't have it from year to year, but like also looking at, are you going to go to a university that's going to require that my kid had health? or that's going to require that my kid had the semester of government and the semester of economics. Whether or not they were homeschooled or not, they need to have both of those things. That is actually a great way to kind of like tailor make what your transcript's going to need to look like. Look at it that way.
Yeah, I printed
And
that
how
out.
many credits they're doing for that.
When we started high school, I looked at Texas A&M, University of Texas, and I printed out like what their admission expectation was for their, graduates. How many years of history, how many years of science, how many years of math. And then they'll say 4 years of math to include algebra 1 and algebra 2, or whatever it said. 3 years of science to include biology, physics, and one other, I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's pretty specific on what they expect. And it is different than what your state graduation requirements might be, which is what's interesting to me. If you look at this high school graduation requirements, they're just not the same as what the colleges say. So go by the colleges if your kid has
Same thing with language. That's a big one with language too. Some universities, it won't be a big deal if they did one language and then switched. Other universities, they want those 2 years in the same language. So even if you look at, 5 different ones, just look at what it is that they're kind of a generalization, especially if you're going down a path where they really don't know what they want to study. Use the resources that you have out there, which aren't necessarily a box curriculum or anything like that, because they're not going to be the same, dependent on, things like that. And of course, sports are a big one. And then the academies. So
yeah, I'll have to add some discussion points in the group on when we get to high school on NCAA and the academies, because that is a whole nother ballgame if your kid's wanting to do athletic scholarships or
Anna Maria's one of Anna Maria's best friends is a swimmer, and she is in the middle of trying to figure out the NCAA insanity that is Division I, Division II, and Division III swimming. So, and as a homeschooler, it's super important.
Yeah. So, but I think this is great. Now, this is good to look at the long view and to start with the oldest kid, and to kind of give you a sense of where we headed, and then go from there. Because the reality is too, I think it was Mimi who said, like, or maybe it was Amy, I don't even know, like in like K through 2nd grade, 3rd grade, mom is pretty much choosing what we do, and do what we think the kid needs, and it's the basics anyway. But once they get a little bit older is when you really start to figure out what do they want and what do they like, to gain their cooperation and get them to to make progress. And so kind of looking at these long-term goals can help. Any other questions before we close for tonight? Oh, Marianne, you're muted. I see your, let's see. Yeah.
I don't know if this is an appropriate question here, but I'm interested in a writing course. I really have nowhere to turn. My son is 12. He can write paragraphs pretty well, but I think it's time to, move on, because he's capable. But he took CEAT in 6th grade last year, which was heavy into grammar and different types of paragraphs. But I'm just looking for something maybe separate from what he's doing now.
Well, I'm
just basically just writing.
Yeah, I'm a big promoter of the Homeschool Connections writing program. I think they do a really good job of touching everything in a way that's not overwhelming. Because I think writing can be huge and overwhelming, but I feel like they do a very good job of progression through it. It's called the Aquinas Writing Advantage program. Is that right? Sounds right.
That sounds right.
And so that's something we switched to in the upper grades for our kids, to give them that sequential education. And that's, I was an English teacher, so I really like it.
Yeah, I thought you might be able to answer it.
And I also like that someone else is teaching them writing, because as a writing teacher, it's a little too close for me to teach. And the great thing about their program is you can do it either live classes, or you can do the recorded classes and grade the stuff yourself, or you can do the recorded classes and pay for what they call instructor access.
That's how we do it.
Which just
same here.
The instructor grades the papers, and you don't have to grade the papers, which
Right.
if I wasn't an English teacher, I would totally do, because it's hard to do. It's even hard
I
to
would,
do
I,
when
I like
am.
doing it that way because I'm a harsher critic than their grader is. So I'm trying to grade it at like a college level because I edited my college friends' papers, but my kid is not in college, so I cannot expect that. But
Yeah.
I can't backtrack enough to do that. So it's
Mhm.
been worth it to us to get, one, it's one less thing for me to grade. And two, it's, I think, more fair to them to have someone grade it at the level they're at versus the level I want them to be at in like 5 years.
The other thing to really, another point for Homeschool Connections, two different things. First of all, I love the fact that when they do it recorded, they can listen to it at their pace. So for my kids that have dyslexia and the issue with that, they can listen to half of it, because if they listen to the whole time, they're like zoned out, like, what's going on? I forgot about my writing class. But they can do it in paces. The other thing with the graded is that you're not going to get the same teacher grading it from one recorded class to the next. And that is a brilliant thing, because we grade it. We know what we're looking for. We know this kid's not going to spell school the same way every single time, or, you know, whatever. But then you have different things. And the way that it translates into that is that they're looking for different strengths and weaknesses. So, you know, there's two really good things for that. I have never done a writing course live, so I don't know, Jenny, you have a different experience than I do. We've done all of our writing courses. So now I'm on my I'm about to start my fourth kid with these writing courses on recorded with instructor grading. My older daughter, Louisa, was only a senior, so she only had that. She was doing the, what are those called? The ones that are like more specific, like the fictional writing.
Yes.
Anyway, she was like at the end like screenwriting and all of that stuff, because she had already finished.
Journalism,
Then I had Anna Maria has been through all of them, 9th, 10th, 11th. And then Kiko's now in 9th, and then Max is doing the middle school.
Right,
But a really good thing is that each of those 8 weeks, which is technically not 8 weeks, they do it usually, my kids usually do it in a much smaller space, especially the grammar and punctuation ones. Then the next 8 weeks, it's a different grader.
Yeah, so that's an awesome option. I know the other kind of middle school, high school writing program that we had a lot of good success with was Writing and Rhetoric from Classical Academic Press. I felt like if you needed a workbook rather than a computer, and you needed, you know, here's the work, that it's a work text really, that they work through. I think they also do a very good job of making it sequential, well-structured, and yet engaging for the kids and entertaining. And so that's another program that, you know, I think works really well for a lot of kids that need maybe something just in their hands and sitting down. And
we've used that one too. And the one thing I like about the Writing Rhetoric is it's open and go. Like you can literally open up the book and it tells you what to do. And it's super simple for mom, and it's super easy. And it's complex enough for the kids, but builds on it. So it's not like you dump them in the deep end of the pool and they don't know what they're doing. Like it baby steps them up to what they need to be doing.
Okay.
yeah, and both of those programs have an assessment where you can figure out where to start them.
Okay. Good.
I think the Homeschool Connections, if you really want like a graded, like they have a graded assessment where you can submit a piece of writing and then they'll tell you what level to put them in. Or you can just look at their, you know, scope.
And Marianne, if he just finished the 6th grade grammar, the 7th grade, the first one is all grammar. Doesn't
So
need
you can
to do
skip
that.
it.
Skip it, yeah.
Okay.
Go into I believe it's 782,
Okay.
and that's the one I would start him with. And if you do Homeschool Connections, I don't know if you do Homeschool Connections at all.
No, I've never done it.
Okay, well if you try their 7-day trial, it's 672 or 782, depending which way you want to go through it. It's in the catalog, the Aquinas Writing Program.
Okay.
You can listen to that first one, but the very first one is all grammar and punctuation. Do not do that to him.
Okay.
Well, and I will also throw in, I don't do the grammar and punctuation classes through the Homeschool Connections writing program. I do the writing classes But the grammar and punctuation, I do analytical grammar and I'm done. I do that separate. It's a little bit faster. My kids take a lot of those recorded classes and I just don't like them doing like more than I really
to be. Yeah.
So I should say that I do that. And I also don't want to, I know a lot of people absolutely love IEW, Institute for the Excellence of Writing. I think it's a great program and I think it does work really well. For me, it always looked way overwhelming on teacher time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not where I am. I can't invest hours in learning a technique and then sit with my kid and invest hours in watching the things and doing all the things. So it's a good program, but it's just very teacher mom involved and mom learning. So yeah.
Right.
And that said, you know, you're in the upper grades. In the lower grades, we're a Brave Writer family. So I do all the Brave Writer stuff from kindergarten through about 6th or 7th grade, depending on where they're at. And then I do throw in their high school programs somewhere in high school because it's really nice way to get their essays looking really unique. But that's what we do first.
Okay.
So if you have a child like my 12-year-old, he likes to write. Actually, he's just writing stories. So he's like, Mom, I want a program like I can write a book and write something. So from all this you're saying, other ones that you mentioned, do you suggest the Homeschool Connections one?
So, well, okay, let me clarify too. I think the one thing that you need about Homeschool Connections or Writing and Rhetoric or IEW is the end goal of those programs is to get them writing essays. It's not about creative writing so much. They'll throw that in there here and there, but it is about writing an essay for high school and college, the stuff that they're going to need to know in college, the stuff that has to go on the application for college. It's essay writing and how to structure that. So it's a different kind of writing than I'm going to write my own book. And so any of those programs would take them through that process.
But Homeschool Connections does have creative writing to write a book.
Yes.
Once you're at high school,
but it's for high school.
Right.
So you're going to have to look and see what it is. But like screenwriting, the classic novel, mystery writing, all of those types of things, they do have classes for that.
Yeah. We did an online creative writing class through, it was another program. It was somebody gifted me a certificate and it was excellent. And it was like my daughter did it, I think in 8th grade, and it was just a lot of fun. It was just creative writing and helped her develop characters and plot and conflict and all those things that are good. And that was a lot of fun. So you can also just research, you know, if he's at that age where you just want to do something to build on his enthusiasm, there's stuff out there, you know, that's
you could look at, I think it's called NaNoWriMo. And it's like you take a month or a year to write your own novel, and it's like a national competition. So that could be something, and the goal is to write your own book. And you could, in middle school, you could totally count that as your part of your English program.
It's called
NaNoWriMo.
I'll write it. I'll try to write it down.
Wait, it stands for
National Novel
Writing Month.
Writing Month. NaNoWriMo.
And I have a friend who basically does that, maybe not that program, but one of her kids' middle school years, they write a book and she self-publishes it on Amazon for them.
Oh, cool.
It's like, it costs a little bit, but she's like, you have a published book now. And they work through that together in a form that they are happy with publishing. It's kind of one of her homeschool things that she does.
Oh, neat.
So that's cool. But yeah, we're going to have a writing, lots of writing chats and the language arts Zoom call where we're all like holding up our awesome books and saying, this is what we use for this. And this is what we use for this, is going to be, I think it's next Monday. It's coming. Monday. So all that language arts stuff. I know that other people use other options. And there's lots more out there, but that'll be a great time for a lot of those questions too, to kind of circle back around. So anything else on designing curriculum for tonight? And if not, we are going to post this call, and then tomorrow I'll be posting some chat starters that will help us kind of discuss the things we talked about tonight, especially for all those moms who wanted to be here and couldn't. We'll have them kind of hear from everybody. Mimi and Amy, if you'll share your perspectives on those as you're able. And then I know there were a couple other moms that didn't come tonight that were willing to answer questions about pulling things together. we'll do that. And that way everybody can, whatever you think of can still be asked. Sound good?
Okay. Sounds good.
Awesome. Oh, well, thank you ladies so much for
Thank
being
you.
here tonight. This has been such a joy, and we will definitely talk again soon. So